Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next Story Punks. For those who don't know, Story Punks is Rooster Punk's interview series where we shine a light on the best stories, sharpest thinking in B2B marketing, and frankly, just some of the best people in the whole of B2B marketing. So I'm Andrew Last, I'm the MD for Rooster Punk, and often I'll tag team with my business partner, Paul Cash. So I'm hoping I keep the quality up there. And I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Ruth Connor. And Ruth is Chief Marketing Officer for BI at Coface, and we'll learn a lot more about what that role is. And, you know, there's a lot of challenges here in the market at the moment where we know that marketing teams are under a lot of pressures to hit their revenue goals and really kind of raise the value and the perception of marketing. So to have Ruth here is ideal because Ruth has spent her career proving, really how impressive marketing could be to the business. She's built and led global marketing teams across FS, insurance, and tech, of course, and really does an amazing job of sort of turning marketing from what I'd call a cost center really into a commercial engine and something that is intrinsic to the business. So we're going to find out a little bit more about Ruth's career journey and hopefully get some top tips and lessons that everyone can take away from. So Ruth, absolutely brilliant to have you here.
Thank you for inviting me to be part of Story Punks. It's a real treat.
Brilliant. Let's get into it then. I'd love to hear like a whistle-stop tour of your career, really, and maybe give us a few highlights, and then let's take things from there.
Okay, well, thank you very much for inviting me on to your podcast or vodcast, whatever the correct terminology is. I'm not sure.
It's all things to all people.
Okay, well, I actually started my marketing career when I was working in a retail bank. And my first marketing post was to help British people buy holiday homes in France, Spain, and Italy. So I helped them, I promoted foreign mortgages as a service, and I'd studied French at university, and I'd had a year of being a mortgage advisor in a bank. So it was a natural fit. And I remember going on my first ever CIM course at the CIM kind of institute in Maidenhead and thought, wow, I can't believe I haven't discovered this thing called marketing before now. This is for me. And then over the last 25 so more years, I've been very lucky to work in both business to consumer marketing in financial services and health insurance before moving into B2B marketing, where quite rightly you mentioned I've worked in tech and insurance, advisory, and also a bit of a stint in an agency. As part of my more recent career, I also was a trainer for the IDM. I delivered the B2B marketing diploma, and I also worked for B2B marketing, delivering some of their in-house training. And if this was mastermind, my specialist subject would have been content marketing. So that's a whistle-stop tour of my career.
Brilliant, and thanks for that. And just tell us about when we were discussing this previously over a coffee. You're saying how often you're sort of the first person in within marketing, and I think you've got some experience of setting up teams from scratch. So I guess the question for you is there a blueprint for this? Like one size fits all? What advice would you give to people, or from your experience?
Yeah, that's right. When I look back over my career, in most of the cases, I have been the first person in or setting up a department from scratch. And whilst there is I guess, a checklist of things that run through your mind of the things you need to consider, I don't really believe there's a one size fits all approach. It really is about understanding what's important to the business, so where there is an opportunity for marketing to add value. How much the business want to invest in marketing is also really important, and the best model. So are you going to try and do it all in-house? Are you going to do a combination of in-house and agency? In my most recent example, we had to consider how much we do at the centre versus how much we do at the regions. So yeah, there is a checklist that you can have in your mind, but I think it's important not to assume there's a one size fits all approach.
Right. And why do you think that you are often that person that comes in? What is it around your personality that really makes you, so effective at being in there? And as you said, you've been in a whole cross section of different organizations.
I
Putting you
think
on the spot here.
Well, I think one of my very first jobs was at Legal and General, and
Right.
at the time, Legal and General was a multi-line insurer that was predominantly sold through brokers, and it was
Mm,
my job to set up the direct-to-consumer channel. And I had to be pretty fearless because there wasn't anything in post. There wasn't anything in place, rather. I had to kind of work with a wide range of stakeholders to work out what we could do, um, and build a business case. And I was very lucky to have agencies to help me who had experience of taking home insurance to market. So I think that really early on in my career, I was doing things that were there was no blueprint to lean on, and I had to work with other stakeholders around the business to say, okay, what could marketing look like? Where does the business need us to add value?
mm,
So in my very first job, I had to set up a call center that could take inquiries from potential British people wanting to buy holiday homes in France. When I was at Legal and General, one of the things that I learned very quickly was that the importance of thinking beyond the campaign and
right.
being joined up with my operational colleagues and sales colleagues to make sure the call centre could handle all the calls my activity was generating. So I think it comes from building those relationships with the different stakeholders around the business. And I think once you understand what's possible and where marketing might play a role in adding value, that helps you carve out, okay, what do we need to make marketing work in this organization?
That's a brilliant first lesson. So started off in more in the consumer world, holidays and then consumer finance. You then made the leap to the bright side, should we say, to B2B. And like what was, what did you first notice? Like what surprised you, if anything, about that transition?
Well, I mean, there are some big differences, but there are also a lot
Mm,
of similarities. So I brought with me from my consumer days a real focus on measurement. And
right.
when I was at Legal and General, I actually had P&L responsibility for the direct channel. So I had to learn about all the aspects of an insurance P&L and the impact that my marketing activity had on that. So how much I could afford to pay to acquire a customer, how long they might stay with us, what kind of claims experience they might have.
Mm,
And I was able to kind of transfer that commercial mindset into B2B. So I think that was the first kind of transition. The second transition is that everybody says that B2B is boring and less creative, and I just didn't really find that to be the case. I think at the end of the day, we're still communicating with humans who just happen to be at work. They don't lose their sense of humour or their sense of curiosity when they walk through the office door. There are some obvious things like the time to buy and the number of
mm,
people involved in the buying cycle are much greater, you know, um, and there's actually quite a lot of personal risk involved for a B2B buyer because at the end of the day, nobody wants to be responsible for putting a bad system or making a bad choice on behalf of their company. So there's much more higher levels of personal risk involved in B2B as well. So I think they're the main differences and similarities I saw when I made the transition over.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the emotional side of it is obviously we talk about here at Rooster Punk is, if anything, the stakes are higher in B2B. And I'm really interested. So, sort of having a look at where you are at the moment, because we want to talk about the sort of building a team from zero, and obviously you came into Coface, and essentially, you've built a centralized global marketing function for the BI side from scratch in an 80-year-old business. And look, I mean, we could probably do 30 minutes just on that, which isn't really the purpose of today. But I'd love to hear like a little bit around like what existed, if anything, and what are those first steps you took to build out a function, because you're not in a startup, you are in an established business.
Well, I mean, you're absolutely right. Coface has been around 80 years, and the trade credit insurance side of the business is incredibly well established. Business information is a relatively new business unit within Coface, and is actually a bit like a startup from that point of view. So during the interview process, I actually met a lot of people who had really clear vision of what a high performing marketing function could deliver for our business unit. And when I first arrived, I did that, listening mode for the first 30 days of asking lots of questions around, okay, what's happened before now? What's the biggest opportunity in your region? What's stopping you from turning on some of these
Right.
things? And I think the first thing I would always encourage kind of other marketeers to be in this position, and it's not glamorous, but is to really focus on supporting your sales team and helping your sales team sell, because ultimately they're probably already in post, and they might not have pitch decks or product marketing materials or
Right.
sales enablement. And actually, if you help them first and foremost, then you are keeping the momentum going, and that buys you some time then to take a step back and do some of the other things you might want to do from a marketing point of view. So that's one of the things I would advocate. From a Coface point of view, we have this we have 7 regions across the world, so we really explored like a genuine global local combo, to be honest. So we ended up with a very small head office team who are responsible for the brand, the content, the product marketing. We do a couple of global campaigns. We advise on the website strategy and the content marketing strategy and campaign. And really, we started with the regions and or the countries where there was the biggest market opportunity.
Right.
So here we recruited dedicated BI marketing people to help us execute and to help us help the local sales community really accelerate their commercial success. So that's basically kind of what we did. So once again, spent lots of time with the stakeholders, listening, asking questions. Had this mental checklist in the back of my mind as the things that need to be considered. But within I'd say the first 3 months, I'd gotten to the point of making a recommendation to the CEO that he approved, and we started putting the wheels in motion to recruit the team.
Interesting. So I'm getting a theme here, and it isn't just the way I teed up at the start. It's staying close to the money, isn't it? And knowing what the commercial priorities for the business, and then you've got the justification for marketing to be to one team there. Actually, a question on that. What was your first hire, or what would you recommend as a first hire? Coming in at quite a senior level to then build a team around you.
I was quite fortunate that the business had already hired a go-to-market
Right.
director and a pricing director and a product
Okay.
manager. So I actually arrived, and a couple of those people were in post or were about to join. So actually, that gave me some overarching kind of framework to start with already. So I'd say, some kind of strategic marketeer, either go-to-market director or a strategic marketeer who has a really good grasp of how to build the ideal customer profile, how to articulate the value proposition, and like I said, really furnish the sales guys with what they need to continue their commercial success. I think that's an important place to start.
Yeah, and really interesting that out of those 3 people, one of them had one of the 4 Ps, pricing in there as well, which once again gets really overlooked. But the power of overseeing the pricing, especially for what was essentially a new offering to the market and for the business, is incredibly important. Just a question I've got in mind, because we've talked about this a lot. We've got lots of clients who are in a similar scenario where you've got this central team, and obviously there's different ways of bringing countries on board, and ensuring that there's sort of whatever it may be, one story, one campaign, one proposition. What are there any tricks or any tips, advice you've got about bringing the local markets on board, so you get genuine buy-in, I suppose, rather than just sort of forced compliance?
I think the main thing is about the relationships with the country marketing people.
Right.
So personally, a, a vast majority of my time is spent supporting them. You know, I am their chief cheerleader, so
Right.
I'm there to champion marketing and there to help them build business cases for investment, to kind of take down any challenges or roadblocks they might be encountering. So I think the first thing is to build really good relationships with the people in the regions and to listen to what they have to say. And when it comes to rolling out kind of centrally coordinated activities, it's super important to listen to their feedback about what's going to work and what's not going to work, and to give them some flexibility on how those things get rolled out into the field. So for me, it's all about building a really good relationship with them so they know that ultimately you've got their back and you're on the same side as them.
Tell me more about this. I love that. The chief cheerleader. Have to check what the average tenure for that part of the C-suite is. I'll do that, listeners, after this, and it'll be in the summary. So yeah, chief cheerleader. I get the principle of it. You've explained it really well. But any kind of soft examples of where you've done that, especially probably working in, like, a lot of our clients in hybrid roles where you can't always be in person together. Like, how are you making that happen?
Well, I mean, some of my other organisations, actually, I've got some good
Hmm.
examples. So when I was at Calibrate, which is where I worked before I joined Coface, we made a team submission for Team of the Year in the B2B Marketing Awards.
Right.
And we did that because frankly, we had worked really, really hard for 3 years on kind of building the commercial impact of marketing, and we had really good results to share. And we had no real aspirations of winning, but we had a story and we put it down on paper, and it was hugely satisfying for the team to see the efforts of all of their hard work actually be benchmarked against the best marketing teams in the country, and to come out with the silver award. So I think for me, life's not about winning awards, but you only get to be in that position if you have the numbers and the story to substantiate those award submissions. So for me, it would have been really easy to just be too busy and not do it. But actually, we decided as a team to put a submission in. Everybody contributed, and it paid off. So
Okay, I get it. Yeah, so it's, as I said, it's sometimes arming people and enabling them with the data points to make them look good. Other times it's just, yeah, shining a light and success. Yeah. You kind of overlook that. Often people focus on the work, which is so important, but I guess that comes back to your background of, marketing is more than just campaigns, as you said earlier. I'd like to hear a little bit more about Calibrate, because obviously, that's where, we work together, and that's quite a different organization to where you are currently. Is that right? They were, at the time they were PE back. There must have been quite a lot of commercial pressure. I'd love to hear about, how you approach marketing in that kind of organization, and any learnings, because once again, I think a lot of our listeners, will be in similar size scale ups.
yeah, so we were owned by a PE firm, like you said. Marketing was part of revenue operations.
Okay.
So I had a super chief revenue officer in Jane Clark, and a really supportive CEO in Oliver, who you might remember. And, you know, uh, working at Calibrate taught me a lot about kind of tech products and the life cycle of product releases,
Mm.
user forums, client advisory boards, all of those kind of things that I just hadn't done before in my career. And, the PE firm focus meant, for example, like every Friday, we would have a heartbeat meeting where every leader had to report their main metrics for that week. And that gave the CEO a view of the things he needed to focus on the following week. So that brought about a level of commercial kind of discipline as well for me. Um, I think the other thing, because we were part of revenue operations, measurement and being able to really
Mm.
track became super important. And actually, we as a business, we made a decision at the time to go fully HubSpot. So we had been HubSpot
Yep.
on the marketing side, and then we decided to actually migrate to HubSpot CRM, so we could once and for all track end to end. And that was pretty game changing to be able to have that level of granularity, and that level of kind of insight, so we could log on and look at a customer and see the extent to which they were engaging with our newsletters, with our user forums, with our content marketing, with our
Mm.
NPS surveys. Everything was all in that one place, and that was incredible. I was also quite lucky during that time when we did work together to introduce kind of like strategic content
Yep.
marketing. And here, what I would say is it's very easy to produce content now, but you shouldn't lose sight of choosing topics that are the sweet spot. So things that are important to the target audience, but
Mm.
also important to you as a business. And I think we were quite fortunate that we found a topic that met that brief, and we
Hmm.
had a super kind of passionate CEO who loved talking about that topic as well. So the combination of those two things and working with an amazing agency meant we were able to produce a really impactful thought leadership campaign that had a really positive impact on pipeline and new business. So yeah,
Yeah.
there's some of the things that I learned from my time at Calibrate.
Yeah, I'm really interested in the point you made at the start about being part of a revenue function, because we talked at the start, and the whole theme here is about raising the value of marketing and closing the coloring in department. Um, so do you your experience there sounds incredibly positive. Do you feel that most marketing teams should be joined as like a joint revenue function, depending on the size of the business? Because I hear mixed things from other clients, because they don't want to spend their whole, some clients, some brands, you could end up as basically a sales support function, and you spend your whole time doing sales enablement and sales decks, but it doesn't sound like you've had that experience at all. So I'd just love to explore that a little bit more.
Yeah, I was quite fortunate that the revenue leaders saw marketing as much more than trade shows
Mm.
and pitch decks. So that was super helpful. I think regardless of where you are kind of structurally, you should never overlook the importance of the relationship with the commercial side of the business. So, for example, for a long, long time now, I've said to marketeers, when you
Mm.
join a new organisation, spend time with your sales colleagues, either in trade shows or prospect meetings or client meetings, and understand what it's like to pitch your solutions in the external
Yep.
environment, understand how your marketing material is being used in the real world. I think at the end of the day, our sales colleagues carry the weight of the business targets on their shoulders, and that is a huge responsibility. And we shouldn't kind of lose sight of that. So yeah, I think regardless of your structure, spending time with your commercial colleagues is super important. It's really important to try and get that feedback loop as well. So when you do deliver leads and MQLs and pipeline to them, what makes them do a fist bump because they know that's the kind of lead that's going to convert quickly and well. And what's the kind
Sorry,
of
sorry to interrupt. Does that mean that high fives are out of fashion?
Oh, I don't ask me. I haven't got a clue. I mean, this
Okay, all
virtual world,
right.
whether
No,
it's
no, 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 no.
fist
I'm
bumps or
just
high fives
realizing.
or
I'm
happy
realizing why everyone
dances.
at Rooster Punk looks at me funny when I'm high fiving everyone after a win or something. Sorry, I stopped your train of thought. Yeah, so that integration isn't just about having a single dashboard and the CRM and being aligned, but it's also, yeah, just other ways of working, the softer side. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me it starts at you have to think about the end-to-end cycle. So it starts
Mm.
by truly understanding where they've had success so far in selling to the customer and why, so you can build your ideal customer profile, and particularly in the early stages where you might not have had thousands and thousands of new customers. So if you're in a startup environment, understanding the early successes are super
Mm.
important. What kind of businesses, what was the key to win. All of that is really, really important. And then all the way through to understanding, well, why didn't we win that deal? What are the reasons why? Making sure that you're close to, even if it's not a formal win-loss analysis, but being part of those conversations to understand, was there something about the positioning from a marketing point of view? Was it something about the targeting that wasn't right? I think having that feedback loop, and then throughout the customer life cycle as well, it's super important to be close to either your customer success or account management teams. One of the things we did at Calibrate was to introduce customer NPS. And like, I
Right.
hear a lot that NPS is dead, there's better ways to measure. Not my opinion. I think NPS is really important still. And for us, we introduced it, and everybody had then a collective target to improve NPS together. We rang all of the customers that took part, who were willing to talk to us, to deep dive a bit more into their feedback, to understand how we could improve things. So I think it's, yeah, seeing them as colleagues and as compadres in this joint mission is super important, regardless of your structure.
Yeah, no, that's really useful. And I know when we've spoken previously, you've said how powerful setting up cabs, a customer advisory board has been, and the insights you get from them and staying close to the customer is just actually gives you one of the biggest buzzes from what I can tell you get out of your role. Brilliant. Well, look, I'm conscious of time because you literally have an incredibly important numbers meeting straight after this. So I just want to move on to kind of the final section, which is around future B2B marketing leadership. So I really want to know and get from your experience here. So look, you've run tutorials and help, you said at the start, B2B marketing tutorials help mentor the next generation of talent coming through. So what do you see as the biggest gap or biggest gaps for how marketers are developing at the moment?
I'm not going to talk about kind of AI, because I'm sure you'll have plenty of other people talking about
Yeah.
that topic. I would strongly encourage people to not lose sight of some of the basics. Mark Ritson did a survey recently about the shocking state of kind of marketing education in the
Did
UK.
he get
So,
did he get sweary? Did he?
oh, probably a
Probably.
little bit. You know what he's like. But there's a couple of things I would always recommend people come back to is, firstly, your ideal customer profile. So really understanding who that is and using that to help inform your kind of targeting strategy, I think is number one. I also wouldn't lose sight of the 7 Ps, because
7? I thought it was
actually,
4.
well, there was I think, wasn't it, physical evidence, process, and people on top. And I think they're an important framework
Yeah.
because, particularly if you're evaluating the success of your marketing activity, all of those other P's have a really big influence on your end result. So understanding how they work in your organisation is very important. I think we've talked a lot today about commercial focus, and I would say, by hook or by crook, you have to find a way of being able to report on
Yep.
the impact of your activity. And if I think back to the days that I have spent kind of manually trying to knit together reports, I mean, I think that's probably where I've spent the most amount of my time in my career. And then I would say I wouldn't lose sight of the continuous improvement mindset. When I first started in marketing, I was traditionally in kind of like direct marketing roles, and there was very much a test and learn or champion and challenger strategy. And I remember from my time at Ernest, we had this thing about spending 10% of your budget on things you hadn't done before.
Yep.
And I think that we shouldn't lose sight of
Mm.
testing new things and trying to improve on the campaigns that we've done before, or the always on activity results that you're getting. But then finally, I would say focus on your people. Get to know them really, really well. Get to know them. What motivates them, where their challenges are, where they need your help, and really build that relationship with them so they know that you have their back and that you're going to be their cheerleader. I think that's the most important thing for me.
Yeah, back to the CCL, Chief Cheerleader. Brilliant. Well, I feel like we need to turn that into a bit of piece of content after this. That's some brilliant advice there. Look, you didn't know this was coming, but we did a call out before the event to the community and asked for any questions for you, and they actually came back with over 4. So I'm going to put you on the spot here. Quick fire questions. We've got, I think, 3 minutes left before your incredibly important meeting. So first one first. Let's try and keep them tight. I know what you're thinking. You're like, the questions are taking ages. You're not giving me any time. If you could ban one marketing buzzword, what would it be?
Oh my God. All of them. I hate the fact that we have to reinvent ourselves. Like, account-based marketing drives me insane, because really we should just be focused in on highly targeted marketing. End of.
Okay. Next one. What is your proudest career achievement? You don't have
Client
necessarily.
advisory boards. I mean, in my B2C days, I would have said doing my first ever TV campaign, but in my B2B days, client advisory boards, because there is something really special about getting a group of customers together and hearing what they've got to say, and then being able to act on that.
Yeah, and it's amazing how that gets overlooked, particularly in sort of startups and scale ups. And then someone said, "Oh, hi Ruth. What would you do if you didn't need to work?" I think that means how would you spend your time?
I would play tennis a lot
Right.
more than I do currently. I would walk my dog a lot, and I would be a full-time cheerleader mentoring any B2B marketer that wants my help.
Brilliant. And putting you once again on the spot, has there been a campaign or a brand you've seen out there recently that really kind of made you stop in your tracks and you thought, wow, I love that? And I mean, obviously all the Rooster Punk work that's been going out over the last few months, but you can't mention that. So we're not biased here. And if there's not, you can come back to me because I.
No, I can't think off the top of my head.
And that probably says one of two things: either the industry's struggling to do brilliant work, or we just don't have the time to sit up and take notice because we're too busy in in our own roles. But that's fine. I've got one more question that I put down, which is you mentioned tennis. I know that's one of your big hobbies. So bear with me on this. We've got 90 seconds, I think. If the perfect CMO were a tennis player, who would it be and why? Which tennis player and what are the attributes?
Andy Murray was I was gutted when he retired. And the reason I like him is because he was not the best tennis player on the circuit, but he was a grafter. Like, he worked hard. He was highly personable. He championed women and women's tennis and
Yep.
women's athletes. And he also had a bit of fun and had a dry sense of humour. So I think they're all really important attributes in a modern CMO.
Brilliant, Ruth. Well, look, you saved yourself after you couldn't mention any campaigns you've seen and brought it home. Well, look, I just want to say, look, thank you so much for joining. Just one of the best people in the industry. So there must be loads of gold dust for people to take out of this interview. So I hope everyone enjoyed it, and let us know what you think on socials, and see you at the next Story Punks. Bye, Ruth.
Thank you, Andrew. Bye.
Bye.